Self-surgery, being buried alive and escaping a serial killer. These are 10 people who survived the impossible. Number 10, self-surgery. Surgeries are already scary and frightening. Nobody wants to be cut open or poked and prodded, but imagine having to perform surgery on yourself. While journeying through the Antarctic, a Russian surgeon named Leonid Rogozov had to make a life or death decision. Once he and his team arrived in the Antarctic, they knew they had to stay there through the entire winter due to how intense the weather is during that time of year. But it was at this time Leonid discovered he had acute appendicitis. He was faced with a tough choice: wait 36 days for the boat to return to bring them to safety, or perform surgery on himself to remove his appendix. After 2 hours, Leonid pulled off the impossible surgery. He shocked himself and the world by managing to pull this off. He should have died and been unable to do this complicated surgery himself, but he survived. Number 9, buried alive. Even the people closest to you can be crazy. This was the case for Michelina Lewandowska when her future husband tried to kill her. Michelina was only 27 years old when she was surprised by a stun gun attack from her then future husband, Marcin Kasprzyk, while they were getting ready to leave the grocery store. When she woke up, she remembers hearing dirt hitting the top of the box she found herself stuck in. She was being buried alive. She kicked and screamed all for nothing, but hope struck through when her engagement ring, of all things, was able to poke a hole in the cardboard coffin she was kept in. Once she was able to make a hole big enough, she was able to escape her grave. All we know is what happened was a miracle. Thank goodness she continued to try and never gave up. Number 8, railroad killer. The railroad killer was a serial killer famous in the late 1990s for finding and killing his victims near railroad tracks. When she was just 20 years old, a college junior, Holly Dunn, came face to face with the railroad killer and was sure to die. Among other horrible things, she was stabbed and beaten unconscious. Her unconscious state made her breathing shallow, leaving her attacker to think he killed her. When she woke up, her attacker was gone, and she took the chance to escape. When she was being attacked, she remembered taking in every detail of the man's face and scars. Her memory of the man helped the police find and arrest him for his horrible crimes. After spending the rest of his life in jail, he would be killed by the prison system for his horrible crimes. If it weren't for Holly, imagine else who he could have taken. If you think these were crazy, things are about to get crazier. Keep watching to see what's next. Number 7, Mission Impossible. In 1975, Ba Van Nguyen was trying to get his wife and 3 kids away from the North Vietnamese army, and he did something absolutely incredible. When it seemed as if all hope was lost and that he couldn't get his family out of the country and into the hands of U.S. soldiers that arrived to help, a spark of light emerged. His father stated that the U.S. was flying helicopters in and out to help and that they must have been landing somewhere. It was then that he had a moment of genius. He hijacked one of the largest South Vietnamese helicopters with his family, flying it towards the U.S. boats out in the water. While low on fuel, he would go on to find a ship named Kirk, but its helipad was too small. Ba decided he would hover over the helipad and made his family jump to be caught by the U.S. soldiers. Once his family was safe, he drove the plane into the sea, jumping right out before it hit the water. Number 6, stabbed in the brain. Most people would think that getting stabbed or shot in the brain would kill you, but it seems as if there are very rare times in which this isn't the case. Phineas Gage was just 25 years old in 1848 when he suffered from a devastating accident that would have killed anyone else. On September 13th, while he was working his job at the railroad tracks, he was using an iron rod to shove explosive powder into a hole when it suddenly ignited and sent the iron rod right through Phineas's head. The rod went straight through his head, but somehow still he survived. While he was never the same and was practically a different man after the accident, it's a miracle he lived to see another day. He would live a shorter life because of this, only surviving for 10 more years. But his survival alone was unbelievable. While it's sad that he was a different person after what happened, I think we can all appreciate the crazy 1 in a million chance Phineas was given. Number 5, crushed by machine. Getting stuck in small spaces is pretty scary. No one likes to be trapped. But what if you were forced to fit through that space? Sounds a lot worse, right? Matthew Lowe was just your average factory worker when tragedy struck. Without realizing it, his overalls got stuck in a 5-inch wide processing machine and pulled him in. Matthew was forced through the 5-inch gap, not being able to do anything to stop it. When he was popped out on the other side, he broke his back in 2 places. His pelvis completely shattered, both hips and ribs fractured, and his stomach and bowels ruptured. Matthew was broken all over. Upon arriving at the hospital, his family was told to expect the worst, as it was pretty much impossible to save him from such bad injuries. He still had to have 6 surgeries to get put back together again. Even Matthew himself had gone on record saying he had absolutely no idea how he managed to survive. Neither do we. Number 4, human inflation. Have you ever seen moments in cartoons cartoons where people get inflated until they become balloons? Looks pretty funny, right? Not as funny in real life. Stephen McCormick is a small-town truck driver who was stabbed in the butt by a high-pressure air hose as he was working on the hitch between his truck and trailer. Air began to flow into his body at around 100 pounds per second. When remembering the experience, he said, "In a matter of minutes, my body was twice its size." Stephen's body began to literally blow up like a balloon, building up so much pressure that he was moments away from possibly exploding. Thankfully, his son was on the scene to help, but needed help from others to lift his father off the nozzle because he was becoming heavier due to the air buildup. It took doctors a total of 3 days to get all of the extra air out of Stephen's body. Thankfully, he suffered no major breaks or bruising. Thank goodness. Starting out, things get even freakier. Keep watching until the end. Number 3, sucked into a storm. Ava Vishnerka wanted to paraglide one day when it seemed as if there might be some bad weather, but she sadly thought nothing of it before ascending into the sky. Once she got in the air, 2 big thunderclouds began to approach. Normally, this would not be much of an issue, but Ava and her crew took off an hour behind the other pilots who had already cleared the storm. While Ava tried to dodge it, she flew straight into the big thundercloud and was caught by the storm's updraft and sent flying into the sky. As she continued to fly higher into the sky, the air became colder and things got much harder for her as it began to hail. Ice balls the size of oranges smacked her left and right, as well as weighed her down until she blacked out. While knocked out, her glider gave way and she began to fall. Her glider eventually opened back up. Barely able to move, covered in ice, she grabbed the brakes as she made her emergency landing. She landed, laying stranded until someone called her phone for help. She was almost frozen and still incredibly weak, but help thankfully arrived soon. Number 2, 2 months frozen. Nobody likes to be in the cold for as long as an hour. It's uncomfortable and hard to get warm. But could you imagine having to survive in the cold for 2 months straight? Peter Skilberg's car went off the road on December 19th of 2011, resulting in him being stuck in his now snow and ice covered car for what would become 2 months. Unable to escape his icy vehicle, he tried to survive on handfuls of snow as he tried to keep warm during below zero temperatures. Doctors and science experts believe Peter went into a one-of-a-kind human hibernation that allowed him to survive as long as he did. His metabolism had slowed down due to the extreme cold, which allowed him to stay safe. He was found with hypothermia and a severe lack of nutrition. He was in such bad shape he couldn't speak, only being able to mutter 2 words, "Snow, eat." Eventually, he was able to say that he had not eaten real food in around 2 months. Number 1, building collapse. When a building in Bangladesh collapsed into rubble, one woman's willpower to survive kept her alive under the most stressful of conditions. Reshma Begum was a seamstress working on the 2nd floor when the building around her collapsed and trapped her under tons of rubble. While breathing became increasingly difficult, she managed to continue by breathing through a pipe nearby. She thought all was over for her, until hope showed its face in the form of the sound of debris and metal moving around. It was quiet, but she knew what she had heard and began tapping to get their attention. She tapped and tapped forever, until eventually someone heard her. She lived on dried food that was lying around her for 15 days before they found her. They estimate she was down there for a total of 408 hours, with first responders making note of how impressed they were with her will to live. That was part of what kept her alive. I think Reshma is a perfect example of how we should never give up in the face of danger. Her strength and willpower are something to be marveled at. Enjoyed the video? Now watch this one.